Yo, what is going on, Nitrosites? It is your boy, the Nitro General here, back at it again for Season 5 of the NPBA with our draft analysis for Season 5. If you guys are excited for this and you really do want to show some support, I would really appreciate it if you guys would hit that like button down below and subscribe if you guys are new. Help me hit my end of the year goal, which is 350 subscribers. I don't think we'll be able to do it at this point, especially because I haven't really been uploading videos as much, but yeah. Make sure that you guys are subscribed with the notifications on because we will be having a battle each week. I'm going to aim for Wednesdays like I did last season, but what we're going to try to do is aim for it so I can get videos up for you guys once a week. Now that I'm going to be recording videos here on the channel, I'm definitely going to have a little bit more of a drive to create more content again. So hopefully we're going to have more videos than just the Draft League. So, yeah, make sure you guys are ready for that because we're going to have a lot of fun this season. The Baltimore Blazekins are coming back with a vengeance. Last season, we lost in the final battle. The season before, we lost in the semifinals. The season before, we actually won. So we've gotten so close the last 3 seasons. First season, we don't really talk about first season. Only made it to playoffs, did not make it past that. But now that I know a little bit more about draft, I think we're good. I think we're gonna pop off this season, hopefully. We've got a pretty good team. I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute, but yeah. So the NPBA, the Nitro Pokemon Battle Academy, is actually the draft league that I created a few years back, and it really didn't come to fruition for a while, and then, you know, it actually came back, and honestly, I've had a lot more success with the league than I ever thought I would. Now, it's not a big league by any means. 12 coaches, I keep it that way because I prefer to have a smaller one, easier to interact with everybody, easier to focus on everything since it's mainly just me. I have a couple other moderators that help me out with a lot of stuff, and I really appreciate both of them. I'll shout out Ninblocks and Mobile Rider for helping me out, as well as Spec Ops too. So everybody's helped me out a little bit here, but for the most part, I'm running this, so it's easier to have it a little bit more smaller. So, but yeah, I'm really excited to get into this, guys. I just want to thank every single person who is competing in this league, who's watching this, for taking time out of their day to compete in this little tiny, you know, passion project of mine. Really does mean a lot. I really do love doing this, and this is just something that's super cool. So, as well as thank you to every single person who's watching this video and who is going to be watching all of my battles throughout the season, because, you know, also means a lot that you guys want to watch my content. Of course, YouTube tells me that my average view duration is only 3 minutes, so if you guys want to help out even more than you do already by leaving that like and subscription, just watch the video in its entirety. That's really all you gotta do. But yeah, so I don't really want to waste too much time. I know I can drown down in my intros, and I apologize for that. So let's get right into it. So overall, I had the second pick in the league, which is really good and not so good. It's really good because I did have a first pick, or the second pick I should say, one of the first picks of a tier 1. However, in a snake draft like this, you do have to wait for it to come back, go all the way to the last person, and all the way back. So that's like 20 picks from where I was before I got to pick another Pokemon. And that's usually how it goes in every single round. And it sucks a little bit. Well, I mean, that's usually how it happens for everybody, I guess I would say. But what really sucks is that I get 2 picks back to back. However, after the first round, I was really nervous that a lot of good tier 2s would be picked, and I wouldn't get my pick of a good tier 2, which didn't actually happen. But for the beginning of the draft, I actually wasn't focused on getting a tier 2 immediately. I was actually focused on getting another tier 1, which didn't come to fruition, as I'll explain here. But yeah, so going into this, I really just wanted to get a tier 1 immediately. I took a little bit of a different approach to this draft as I did in previous seasons, where I actually focused more on the lower, after I got my tier 1, I should say, I focused more on the lower tiers than I did on more, like, tier 2s, because I was pretty confident that a lot of the tier 2s that I wanted would have been there till later in the draft, while a lot of my tier 3s that I wanted in my tier 4 would not have been. And honestly, I feel like last season I focused too much on getting better higher tier Pokemon and suffered a lot with my lower tier Pokemon. And I think this season I ended up getting a lot of really good lower tier Pokemon and a decent amount of good higher tier Pokemon too, so I'm very proud of that. So for our tier 1, luckily the one that I wanted did not get sniped first pick, which is what Goldango went. I think Goldango went first last season too, but I was looking at a lot of different Pokemon. I was looking at both Landorus and Regieleki. The only things about both of those Pokemon is that Landorus, without terrestrialization, because in this league, only Pokemon in Tier 3 and Tier 4 can terrestrialize. You can have 2 Terra Captains, but only 2 of those Pokemon can terrestrialize in Tier 3 or Tier 4. And you have to have 3 predetermined types for those Pokemon. 1 has to be a default type of the Pokemon, and 2 can be whatever other ones you wanted. So because we didn't have Terra, then I couldn't terrestrialize either Regieleki or Landorus. And as good as Landorus is, it's really bopped by one single good Ice-type move. You know, you come out with a really strong, like, Weavile or something and Ice Shard it, it's probably dead. As well as Regieleki is super easily to be combated by one single Ground-type Pokemon. That's all you need for it, since it really doesn't get any other moves besides Electric-type moves, besides, like, Explosion and, Ancient Power. So, like, I really did not want to have either of those Pokemon that I felt like would have limited me, especially because Landorus lost a lot of utility in this generation, as well as I drafted Landorus in Season 3 of the NPBA, and I really did not want to draft it again. So, I was also looking at a lot of other good Pokemon, but I really did want a good Ground-type Pokemon. I feel like last season I struggled to get a good Ground-type, so, you know what? I said that I was going to go with a good one, and we ended up going with the #1 most used Pokemon in competitive Pokemon. We went with Rapture, the Great Tusk. Now, Great Tusk is a great Pokemon. Obviously, it's right in the name, right? It's got really, really good stats. You know, a 131 attack stat is really good, as well as 115 base HP and 131 base defense. Its special defense is not the best, and it's got a respectable speed stat at 87, right? It's actually a really, really good Pokemon, and physically, it's really, really, really good. And this thing, honestly, seemed like like me picking a Pokemon in retaliation to Goldango going first, and I'm not gonna lie, the Goldango team is really scary. It's not one of the ones I'm the most scared about in this league. There's a Trick Room team with Ursaluna, which I was looking at going with Ursaluna because it's just so good. However, it's just really slow, and I did not want to dedicate a full team to Trick Room, especially because I'm not fully confident in my ability to use Trick Room, that I really just did not want to force myself to be into that situation. It's got a respectable speed set, like I said. Physically, it's really good. Especially defensive, it's not as bad. It's not as good, but I still think, like, it's got some respectable bulk, right? It gets access to stuff like Close Combat, Headlong Rush, which is the Ground-type Close Combat equivalent, which is really, really good in this league because I'm not forced to run Earthquake that hits my Pokemon as well, right? Headlong Rush is just really, really good. It also gets access to Ice Spinner, so you can now just bring a Flying type in on this thing to think that you're just going to completely neutralize it when I can just go for an Ice Spinner. Now, I'm not totally sure. Probably should have looked this up before doing this video, but I think it might also get access to Rock Slide. Would make sense, but if it doesn't, Ice Spinner is just really, really good in general. But the big one that I know you guys are like, you haven't mentioned this yet, it is one of the best, if not the best, Rapid Spinner in the entire game, right? It's one of the only Pokemon that gets access to Rapid Spin anymore, and it's arguably better than Iron Treads, and it's just amazing, right? And with the buff that Rapid Spin got last generation with raising its speed, we go for one Rapid Spin regardless of webs or rocks or anything being up, and we're not only extremely fast or decently fast already, but now we're going to be at +1 speed and probably be able to sweep a lot of teams just because they're not going to have anything that's going to be able to outrun it after a couple Rapid Spins, depending on the set. So, you know, that was really, really my thought exactly. It does get access to Stealth Rock as well. Of course, Hazards not being as useful in doubles, but we do have access to be able to run Stealth Rock if we want. This Pokemon is just really, really good in general, so yeah. Now for my next pick, like I said, I had to wait for it to come all the way back to me. I had my heart set on Iron Bundle at this point, because I thought having a core of Great Tusk and Iron Bundle would have been really, really good. Now, of course, both of these Pokemon do have their signature abilities for the Paradox Pokemon, which do suffer a little bit that I'm not able to utilize them a lot, because I don't think Booster Energy is that good in Draft, as much as it is in just regular competitive Pokemon. So I was really, really nervous that I wouldn't, that I would be doing that. Plus, going for 2 Tier 1s at the beginning of a draft is really scary, because that would be 300 of my 500 points, and it would only leave me at 200 points, really only being able to draft like a Tier 4, like a Tier 3, and like 2 Tier 4s. No, I would have been forced to draft 3 Tier 4s. I think. No, I would have been able to draft a Tier 2 and a Tier 3 and Tier 2 4s. So that would have been, pretty scary, but Iron Bundle ended up getting taken on the end of the first round, which I was a little butthurt about, but you know what, it is what it is. And then I had planned on actually going for another Tier 1, didn't really think it through, and going for Volcanion, right? Volcanion I thought was arguably better because it was able to absorb the water-type attacks aimed at Rapture, as well as a couple of the other members on our team that are also weak to water-type attacks. And I thought that was really good, right? It was also a fire typing, which kind of was a little iffy for me because I had another fire typing I had my heart set on later in the draft. And then I got to thinking that because Volcanion is water fire, it is weak to ground type attacks. And the more I thought about it, the less that I wanted my water type Pokemon that's supposed to take the ground type attacks aimed at all my Pokemon that are weak to ground, because we did end the draft with a slight weakness to ground, to be also weak to it. So it didn't matter anyways. Volcanion went like just a few picks before me, but by that time I had already had my heart set on another Tier 1, Walking Wake. Well, really I didn't really have my heart set on it, because there was a Sun team that somebody had drafted Torkoal first round, and I really figured that Walking Wake would go that next turn. He would draft it. He was like 2 picks before me. So I had my heart set on another Pokemon, and he did end up drafting Walking Wake. Not really that big of a deal, but I ended up going for a Tier 2, which honestly ended up working out better for our team because we had better Pokemon in there. And I ended up going with a Pokemon that I don't really have a lot of, I don't really have a lot of experience using yet, and I'm a little nervous about it, but I think you guys are going to be excited about it, and that is Ermac the Basculegion. Ermac, obviously, if you guys know Mortal Kombat, Ermac is the character, that absorbs souls, and, Basculegions is the soul of a bunch of dead Basculins, so I thought that was pretty fitting. This is the male Basculin. The female one was also up for draft. Did not go. Yeah, so that's really what I wanted to do. Don't have a lot of experience. The one thing is, though, the reason why this is a Tier 1, or Tier 2 instead of a Tier 1, I did end up banning Last Respects, right? Contrary to, it would have been really good for me, since I was the only one who drafted a Last Respects Pokemon. A couple of the other guys expressed that it might be better to just ban the broken move, and I agreed. Get out of here, Microsoft. Get out of here. Sorry about that. So, yeah, I was really excited about drafting this thing. We did end up drafting a few Hisuian Pokemon. I am a little bit nervous about that because we don't really have the experience with using them. Basculegion is still really good. I ended up going with the male because it's got 112 base attack as well as 120 HP, right? Which is really good. It's got respectable defenses too. 65 defense and 75 special defense, as well as 78 speed, which is actually faster than Great Tusk, right? Yeah, no, it's not. It's slower than Great Tusk. However, it still has, is it base? Yeah, okay, so it's base 530, and then total is 530, and then Great Tusk is 570, so it's a little bit worse. However, it's just a really good Pokemon in general. I really like this Pokemon. It gets access to Wave Crash and stuff, which is really cool too. Doesn't really get a lot of good physical type, ghost type moves. Does get access to Phantom Force, but I don't know how good that's going to be in doubles, so we're really going to see. I don't know how much we're going to be running ghost-type moves on this thing, but we do have the ability if we want to. So that's pretty cool. This Pokemon is just really good in general. It does get access to Swift Swim. There was a Pelipper Palafin team that was drafted. That's going to be really good. And I think this thing would be really good on that on the team for that one because of the fact that it does get access to Swift Swim. Also gets access to adaptability, which is really, really good as well. Adaptability being the ability that gives you a plus 2 boost to your stab moves rather than a +1 that it would normally get. So I was pretty excited about that. I think that overall it's really, really good, and I'm really excited. Now, the next one, I really had, like I said, I had my heart set on a tier 3, right? It came back to me just after 2 more picks, and I really wanted to draft this tier 3 right away. However, I felt like it was going to last. It had 2 forms that you could draft. I was going to be okay with either of them, but I had my heart set on one single one. And I really thought that for both of those to be picked before it came back to me was fairly low. And there was another tier 3 that I really did want, that I felt like was going to be good for the team. Not really necessarily good for the team, but Pokemon that I really wanted to use that I felt like was going to go in that turn if I did not pick it. So I took the risk and did not pick the Pokemon that I really, really, really wanted, waited a whole nother time for it to come all the way back around to me to get it, and I ended up going with Chopper the Cleaver, right? I really like Kleavor. I think it's a really, really dope Pokemon. Probably my second favorite of the Hisuian Mons after Overqwil. I really, really like this thing in general. It's just such a good Mon. Unfortunately, it was not utilized as much as Hisuian Samurott was. And as much as I really, really like this Pokemon, I'm a little nervous because of the fact that it's not used, like, ever in competitive right now. It's got a base 135 attack, which is really good, and base 95 defense, which is actually pretty decent, as well as a decent, respectable base 70 special defense. HP is 70, special attack is 45, which we don't even really care about that, and a decent, respectable, speed at 85 as well. This thing can be run faster. I think I could probably run a decent defensive set for this thing too. But overall, it's a really good Pokemon. Now, we have seen many, many times that certain Pokemon are better in regular competitive, cough, cough, Regieleki, cough, cough, than in draft. As well as there are plenty of Pokemon that are better in draft than they are in regular competitive Pokemon. And I feel like Kleavor might be something that's really good in draft, but not as good in regular competitive. Now, I'm really hoping I don't bite my tongue and, end up dropping this thing, one of the first weeks of the season, but I'm really, really going to keep using this thing and try it out as much as I can. Stone Axe is such a good ability, being able to set up Stealth Rock as well as being able to get off damage, as well as this thing does get access to Stealth Rock, obviously. We won't ever use regular Stealth Rock over Stone Axe. And then it does get access to Close Combat. It gets access to Sharpness, right? The ability that boosts all of its cutting moves, like Stone Axe, like X-Scissor, Night Slash, Psycho Cut. Don't know if it gets Psycho Cut and Aqua Cutter, but both of those are boosted too. And it's just overall a really good Mon. Now, this would have been a really good Mon to make one of my Terra Captains, but because I was a little nervous of not being able to utilize this thing accurately, I didn't go with this for my Terra Captain. But I do think that this is going to be really good. And hopefully, like, I drafted an Electric type too as a tier 4 later. So hopefully we don't end up just using our Electric type over this one, just like the last season when we kept using Raichu over Cloth because we never really got the access to using it. But yeah, I'm really excited about this thing. I think Chopper's going to come in and chop up the competition. So yeah. So by the time it came back to me, neither of the 2 forms of the other Pokemon were drafted that I wanted. Actually, I think the other form went directly after I took this one, which was fine because I didn't want the other form as much as I wanted this one. And this was a Pokemon that I had my heart set on since the beginning of the draft. I drafted Vesuvius the Typhlosion, right? Typhlosion is not my favorite. It's probably my least favorite of those starters. I'm sorry. I'm just going to say I'm a Meganium fan. I've been a Meganium fan since I was a kid, right? I love Meganium. Feraligatr is arguably better than Typhlosion as well. So, Typhlosion is my least favorite of the 3. It is the starter Pokemon that I went through on my first playthrough of, I didn't play Crystal, I was too young. But on my first playthrough of Heart Gold and Soul Silver, when I was, just a preteen, I did use Cyndaquil, so I do have a little bit of a soft spot, but it gets Eruption, right? I didn't want to go with the Hisuian version, strictly because, 1, I haven't really had a lot of time to use a Hisuian version yet, and 2, the Eruption is going to be doing more damage coming from a pure fire type Typhlosion than it would be with the less stab boost when you have a fire ghost. Of course, they could be terrestrialized. However, I really felt like having a second ghost type was also not the best idea, right? Being able to get hit really easily for some dark type attacks and everything like that. I really just wanted to have the pure fire type Typhlosion so it could come in and just eruption all over the competition, right? Does that get access to flamethrower, fire blast, extrasensory focus blast as well. Like, it's just a really, really good mon. It's got a really respectable 100 speed stat as well as 109 base special attack. Its defenses are decent too. I mean, obviously it's got a base 78 HP, 78 defense, and 85 special defense. So we could run a bulkier one, I think, if we wanted to. But this thing, I think, just having the fast eruptions would be really good. Especially when we could go up against the Sun team and just terrestrialize this thing and be able to be good. And yes, I said terrestrialize. I made this thing my Terra Captain, one of my 2 Terra Captains. And I decided to, for my 3 Terras that I wanted this thing to be, is I went with Fire, Water, and Fairy. Right? Now, I really think that Typhlosion really only benefits from Terra Fire. Like, going for Terra Fire Eruption, I think is the only thing I've ever seen it do. Granted, I feel like on this, especially in Draft League, when you have 3 Terras, it's better to go for an offensive, a defensive, and then another one to kind of, be there to help support, right? Fire, obviously, I mean, we had to have 1 default typing, and Typhlosion's only default typing is Fire, so we had to. I feel like Water is actually pretty decent as well, because of the fact that we can terrestrialize into Water and resist the attacks coming from any ground types, rock types, or rock types, or water types that are all coming into this, right? We resist it. And with Terra Blast, we can actually hit the ground and rock types back for super effective. So I thought that that was a really, really good idea. I really wanted to have a good defensive one. I was debating between water and grass, but I feel like water was better, because if a fire type came in on this thing to resist the fire type attacks, which would be totally normal, we can also hit that for super effective with water type attacks. But if we Terra Grass, then it would be able to hit us super effectively back, and I didn't think that was the best idea, right? Terra Fairy, that's a little bit of a weird one. We do have a slight weakness to Fairy on this team, right? We already have Great Tusk, as well as we have a couple other Pokemon that are going to be weak to Fairy type attacks. So I felt like having this thing would be really good to be able to hit for super effective Fairy on any of those Pokemon, or hit for Fairy on any Pokemon that come out and resist Fairy type moves on this thing, as well as being able to hit anything else that wants us so we can swap it in. As well as I really felt like the only other type that would want to come in on fire type attacks is Dragon, right? So with Pokemon like Hydreigon and stuff floating out there, we Terra Fairy, you know, they come in, want to drop a Draco, we're immune, and then Terra Blast kill it, because it's 4 times weak. So having that to be able to resist the fire type attack, or Dragon types, I think is really, really well as well. Now, this thing came all the way back to me. Or no, it was 2 picks and then it was me again. I'm not gonna lie, this next pick I only picked because it was getting really late that day in the draft, and one of the guys messaged me and said, hey, I think I'm gonna be going to bed. If it comes back to me, give me this Pokemon. And that Pokemon was one that I was thinking about drafting later in the draft. So I was like, you know what? I'm actually gonna draft that now so I can lock that down. So sorry, Mobile. And I know, it wasn't Mobile who said that. It was somebody else. I can't remember who it was. I think it might have been Lancey Poo. Somebody else there in the draft messaged me and said that they wanted this Pokemon. And I was like, nope, that's going to be my next pick, even though it was not going to be my next pick. My next pick was actually going to be Mousehold. And then he told me that if that was fine, that if that Pokemon was gone, to go with Mousehold. So I was like, shoot! Would I rather have Mousehold or would I rather have this one? Actually, Mousehold went like 2 picks after this one. I might regret not taking Mousehold after this because I literally had Mousehold typed up when he had told me this. But, you know, I feel like this Pokemon was a little bit better and I really have a soft spot for it and I really had to draft it. We got Overqwil, right? We got Injection the Overqwil, right? Like I said earlier, Overqwil is my favorite of the Hisuian Pokemon and I really, really wanted to draft it. So we needed to have Overqwil, right? We needed to have it. We needed to have Overqwil. I'm sorry. Hopefully I don't regret drafting this thing over Mousehold. I would have been the first one to get Mousehole too, and there was 3 more people that wanted it. And the team that got it is like the second most scariest team in the league, the Sun team. Right? He's got Torkoal, Walking Wake, Hisuian Lilligant, Arcanine, Mousehole. Like, it's scary. It's really, really, really scary. So, but I feel like Injection was good. It hits super effective against fairies. Obviously, it gets Crunch, Gunk Shot, Poison Jab if I don't want to risk the miss. As well as it gets a lot of other really good moves. Does get Liquidation as well, which could be good against the Rain team. However, this thing is not my Terra captain. As much as I think that it benefits from Terra, I felt like because it didn't have a lot of other types that it could go for, I really didn't think that a Poison Dark type was the best for this. But this thing is relatively good. It's pretty good. I mean, it's got a base 85 HP, right? It's got base 65 special defense and a really good base 95 defense, plus a base 115 attack. 85 speed is honestly pretty good as well, too. I don't really care about the special attack, but it's genuinely a pretty good Pokemon. It's the buff that Quillfish needed. I feel like Quillfish would have benefited more from a regular evolution instead of a Hisuian variant, and then an evolution from that, but hey, I'm not complaining. I really, really like this Pokemon. I think it's awesome. Hopefully it'll be as good in draft as I'm thinking it is, but it is easily my favorite of the Hisuian Pokemon, and I'm so excited that we drafted it. So that's really all I have to say about Quillfish, or Overqwil. Like, it's a very good Pokemon, and I'm just really excited. Like, I don't really know what other stuff this Pokemon does. Like, it's a Hisuian Pokemon that's only been out to be able to use for like maybe a month now, and I don't really have a lot of experience using it yet. So, but I have been using it, and it's been pretty good that I've used it in the past. So I'm really, really excited about that. Now, when it came back to me, I finally decided that I wanted to draft a Tier 2. I was going to wait till later in the draft to do one of my other Tier 2s. One of them I ended up drafting for last one because I knew that it really wouldn't be gone. This one was the only one that I was a little nervous actually would not be here later in the draft, right? It's a little funny that I drafted this thing this late into the draft, but I decided that I needed something else to take on water type attacks, right? We already have Typhlosion, Kleavor, and Great Tusk that are weak to water type attacks, as well as, didn't we draft one more Pokemon this week? No, we did not draft one more Pokemon this week to water. But, right, that's 3 of our Mons, 3 of our really good Mons, especially 2 of our really good Mons, in Typhlosion and Great Tusk. Basculegion can take a lot of water type attacks, but he can't really hit them back for super effective. So it stands to believe that I needed a grass to round out my fire water grass core with Basculegion and Typhlosion, right? And this was a Pokemon that I've used competitively. I've seen it used really well. I thought it would be really good for our team, and that is Magic Man, the Meowscarada, right? Now, we got Magic Man, obviously, from Adventure Time. If you guys have never... You guys have probably seen Adventure Time. Come on. If you haven't, watch it. It's a great show. But, Magic Man! So we have Meowscarada here. I'm actually pretty glad that we got this thing. I'm surprised that it didn't go earlier in the draft. Like, I really wasn't planning on this thing until around now. Actually, I was planning on Iron Leaves. That's what I really wanted. And then, curse you, TNA Lynch. He stole Iron Leaves earlier that round, and I don't know if it was that round, but it was definitely when I was like, dang, I really, really wanted that Pokemon. But I feel like arguably Meowscarada is better and can 1v1 the Iron Leaves anyways. But it gets a lot of stuff, right? It gets knockoff, it gets its Flower Trick ability that always crits, or move that always crits, right? It's got Protean, right? It's got Protean. So, granted, it has been nerfed in this generation, so it only works the first turn out, but it still gets Protean. It's still Protean, right? So, I'm really, really excited about that. And why does Meowscarada look extremely high in this picture? I'm just realizing it. Like, its eyes look like extremely bloodshot, and it's like, haha, sad, dude. Like, that's just what it looks like it's saying to me right now. But it's obviously really, really good. Gets access to spikes, too, if I want spikes. Does get access to U-turn, Play Rough, too. A lot of the stuff that will all change its ability. So we have potentially another Fairy type or Pokemon that can hit for Fairy type moves if we're not in the first turn out. But it's just a really, really good mon. I'm really excited about it. Hopefully this thing will be as good as it is. I'm going to trust in Pokeaim MD and take this thing after he had a lot of good use for it in one of his last draft leagues. But yeah. So when this came back to me again, obviously it's just 2 more picks. I knew I needed a fairy type, right? Like, don't get me wrong, we already have Magic Man who can go for Play Rough and even become a fairy type using Play Rough, as well as we have Terra Fairy Typhlosion, but both of those are very situational, right? I need something that could come in, be fairy typing, hit stuff for super effective fairy without having to terrestrialize or have to use the protein ability on its first turn out. Right, and looking at the tier 3s, there really wasn't a lot of really good fairy types. I was looking at Sylveon, but that was tier 2, and I really felt like I had another tier 2 that I really, really wanted to draft more than that. So I decided to bring back the only returning member on this team from one of our previous leagues, and that is Natasha the Gardevoir, right? I really like Gardevoir. It's held a special place in my heart for a long time, and don't take that the wrong way. I just have used Gardevoir on like every single playthrough of a Gen 3 game ever, as well as almost every playthrough of Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire as well, because I really just like this Pokemon, and being able to get routes on a first route is awesome. And fairy typing is just really, really good. So we got Natasha after Natasha Romanoff, the Black Widow, and yeah, we got this thing is gonna be pretty good. I'm really, really excited about it. So it does have a base 125 special attack, which is awesome. A base 115 special attack. It's got a okay HP and 68, but it's not super bulky. I think we could run it bulkier, but this thing is just going to be really good in general, right? Get access to Moonblast, Trick, Mystical Fire. It gets access to Psychic, Psyshock. Gets access to Energy Ball as well. But like it gets access to Trick Room. Not that we would need it, but it does get access to it. I'm not going to spoil something here. I'm not going to spoil it in this video because there could be people watching it from the league, but I do have some awesome sets that I want to run with this Pokemon specifically for a specific team. So I'm really, really excited about that. And, you know, I just thought it would be good to make the Sega Secretary captain. I mean, come on. It's Gardevoir, right? So for our Terra captains, I decided to go with Fairy, Steel, and Fire, right? Fairy is arguably the better Terra type than Psychic, right? I drafted this thing because I wanted a Fairy type, not because I wanted a Psychic type, right? I don't really care about the Psychic typing, I care about the Fairy typing. So that's what we picked for the 2 of those, as well as Steel, because if they want to hit us with a Steel or Poison type move to hit us super effectively, we resist the Steel and are immune to the Poison type attack, right? Granted, neither of those can hit anything super effectively back. However, we are Terra Fire, so if they want to come in and hit us with a Steel type move, we can Terra Fire and Mystical Fire, stab, hit, and kill the Steel type Pokemon, right? Honestly, don't really think this thing really needs anything more than Fairy and Steel either. But Terra Fire, what? Terra Fire. Almost said Terra Fairy again. Terra Fire is really good, I think, just for the Mystical Fire boost. Like, the only other thing I could think that I would have been good with is Terra Ghost. And honestly, I could not see myself using Terra Ghost on this team unless the blocked spin, because, like, if they're aiming a Ghost type move into us, why Terra Ghost anyways and risk being weak to it? So it just doesn't make sense. So yeah, but by the time it came back to me, I decided that I wanted to get 2 more tier 2s, right? Or tier 3s. So, again, I still had a tier 4. I had only used 100 of my 500 points. And I had a tier 3 that I was waiting. And I didn't draft at this one pick. I could have drafted. There was only like one person who could potentially snipe that pick from me. And I made the play that he would not snipe it from me. Luckily, he didn't, but I made the play so I could lock in a couple other good Pokemon, right? I passed up on this Pokemon last season and ended up getting a really, really crappy Ice-type Pokemon and we really struggled with. So I thought having a decent Ice-type Pokemon that we could bring, have an Ice-type as well as other good Pokemon, would be Elsa the Glaceon, right? I love drafting evolutions in draft, and I think Glaceon is just a really good Pokemon in general. It's really, really bulky. I mean, it has 95 base special defense, 110 base defense and 65 base HP, right? Not to mention 130 base special attack, right? This thing gets access to Freeze Dry, gets access to Ice Beam, Ice Shot, does get access to Calm Mind in this generation, right? As well as Wish and Protect. Of course, in this draft link, you cannot use Wish and Protect back to back, but you do have access to both Wish and Protect. This Pokemon, I think, is just really, really good in general. It does get access to Snowscape as well, if I do want to change the weather. So, yeah, I mean, this thing, I think, is just really, really good in general, and I'm really excited about using it. I think it'll come in very, very handy. But, yeah, I love Glaceon. I really, really do, and I'm very, very excited to check it out. So, that's really all I have to say about this one. We're at 35 minutes, so time to wrap this up with my 3 last picks. Now, again, I decided to go for my tier 4 here because I was a little nervous that at this point, if I didn't go for it, it would be picked. And I wanted to get a really, really good Electro-type Pokemon, so I went with Kaboom the Electrode, right? Like, Electrode's really, really not that great of a Pokemon, right? Look at its stats. They're abysmal, right? 60 HP, don't really care about the attack, which is awful. 70 defense, 80 special attack, which is respectable, 80 special defense, but 150 speed? This thing is the second fastest Pokemon in the entire metagame. And because Regieleki went undrafted in this league, we have the #1 fastest Pokemon that was able to be drafted, right? This thing is not great, and I don't know if we're going to bring it ever. However, we have the ability to have an extremely fast Volt Switch Pokemon, or a Pokemon that can come in really, really fast and just fire off thunders, thunderbolts, whatever we want. Granted, it also gets access to screens, right? It gets access to Reflect and Light Screen. Plus, it gets access to Explosion. Granted, it's got a 50 attack. However, you know, its name is Kaboom. I would feel very sad if this whole season I went without kabooming Kaboom once, right? Like, come on. But overall, like, I really felt like this was a good Pokemon to draft just because of its base speed stat. And having something that was able to come in really, really fast and just Volt Switch around and hit the water types that hit Typhlosion, Cleavor, and Great Touch were super effective, I thought were really, really, really good. And I think this will pair really good with Meowscarada too, because both of them can just come in, U-turn, Volt Switch, U-turn, Volt Switch, do whatever they want. So, yeah. Now, the next Pokemon I drafted was actually Lucario, right? But I felt like having another Ground-type weakness after Typhlosion, after Overqwil, after Electrode was not the best, right? And Cleavor being neutral to it. Like, we have Basculegion, we have Glaceon to resist it, and we have a Pokemon that we drafted last that's going to be immune to Ground-type moves. But I felt like so I really did not want another Steel-type Pokemon, but I really felt like we needed a Steel-type Pokemon, right? But I ended up dropping it after the league because I felt like I did not want another fighting type, right? And as good as it is, there was another Pokemon that I saw that would actually be able to do more damage than Lucario. I'm sorry, Spec Ops. I know that's your favorite Pokemon, and I drafted Lucario for you, but I had to drop it, and we picked up our boy Thor the Berserker, right? Berserker's not awful. It's not great. It's got only base 440, which I think is, yeah, it's less than Electrode, right? Its special defense is 60. Its defense is pretty good at 100, and its HP is decent at 70, right? It's not that fast. So it's slower, but it does get access to Steely Spirit, right? Which increases its Steel-type moves. So if I throw a Choice Band on this thing, give it max attack, Adamant, throw Iron Head on this thing, it is plowing through fairies, rocks, ices. There ain't nothing that's going to be able to take a Steely Spirit, you know, close combat, or not close combat, doesn't get access to close combat, but Iron Head with Choice Band, Adamant, like, it's going to be plowing through things. And I felt like having a good Steel-type Pokemon that could combat our Fairy weakness was pretty good. And in fact, the only Steel-type we had would have been Terra Gardevoir and Overqwil that could hit Fairies for super effective with its Poison Stab. I felt like having this one was good. So, we'll see. Obviously, I kind of am a little sad that we had to drop Lucario because I really like that Pokemon. But I feel like Thor will be able to come in and absolutely demolish. So, yeah. Like I said, from the beginning, there was another Tier 2 that I wanted to draft. This is I think the only time I have ever drafted not a tier 4 or a tier 3 for my final pick. Actually, I think it's always a tier 4 that I pick for my final pick. But I picked a tier 2 because I was waiting, because I wanted to lock in all those other Pokemon, and I knew this thing would not have been picked. And I'm so excited, guys, with just a little bit more power needed on the team, you know? Just a little bit. So I decided to go with my boy, Ariel the Galarian Moltres. So, come on, like, it's Galarian Moltres. I love this Pokemon. It adds to our fairy weakness, I know. So now we have Great Tusk, Meowscarada, only when it's dark typed, as well as Moltres that are all weak to fairy typing. But then we have Gardevoir who could take it, as well as Berserker who could take it and hit it back for super effective. So we have a little bit of answers. But Ariel, the Galarian Moltres, obviously Fiery Wrath, being able to hit both slots, be able to flinch, it's really, really good. Does get access to Nasty Plot, Air Slash, Tailwind, which was honestly a big one for me. Being able to get access to Tailwind, I think was really, really cool. Does get access to Taunt, as well as Sucker Punch. Gets access to a lot of stuff. Doesn't get access to Defog, which sucks a little bit, but honestly, not that really big of a deal. Honestly, though, this thing, Berserk, is incredibly fast. There's one single item I want to run on this thing that's my favorite item to run on this thing, but I'm not going to say it now because, you know, there could be certain people watching that would take advantage of that. So, but this Pokemon is just really, really good in general. I'm really excited about using it. I mean, its base 125 special attack is really good. 90 base speed is really good. And then everything but its special defense is actually, in it, special defense is still respectable. Like, it's still base 580. It's still a legendary Pokemon, right? It's the only legendary Pokemon that we drafted on this team. But yeah, but that is our draft analysis for Season 5 of the NPBA, guys. We got Great Tusk, Basket Legion, Meowscarada, Kleavor, Typhlosion, Overqwil, Electro, Gardevoir, Glaceon, Berserker, and Galarian Moltres. So I'm really, really excited about this. This team, I think, will be really, really good. I'm a little nervous because we did pick 3 Hisuian Pokemon that I've never used in draft and don't have extensive use in using, like pretty much all the other Pokemon. I don't really have extensive use of Meowscarada, but I have extensive use of like all the other ones. So I've used a lot of Great Tusk, as well as Typhlosion I've used quite a bit. Electrode I've used a few times. Gardevoir I've used quite a bit. Glaceon I've used quite a bit. I've used Berserker sometimes, not a lot, but Galarian Moltres I've used to use like all the time. Does get access to Hurricane as well, so there's that. But yeah, guys, that is my draft analysis. Let me know down below what you guys think of the team. If you guys think that I have a different weakness that, you know, that sucks, right? I do have a little bit of a fighting weakness too with Glaceon, Berserker, and Meowscarada when it's dark, and Moltres, you know, resists it. And Overqwil is neutral, and Moltres is neutral. The only Pokemon that we have that resists it is Gardevoir, and Bastion Legion is immune. But, yeah, Gardevoir, I think it's just going to be our, like, oh, you're weak, your team has a slight weakness or something, Gardevoir, you know? Like, but, yeah, so I'm really, really excited about this team, really, really excited about the season. Make sure you guys have your notifications on so you not miss when a new video goes up this Wednesday or next Wednesday, I should say, for the first battle against, you know, a really, really scary team, Karanikis, because Karanikis is a really, really good battler, and him and I he's the only team that has been in the league since Season 1, besides myself, and him and I have went back and forth and traded wins, and he's going to be coming back with a vengeance after last season, especially after beating me the first time, and then having me come back to take my revenge and beat him in the semi-finals with a first-turn wake-up Palafin, Ice Punch Palafin to knock out his Amoonguss, right? So, I'm a little nervous that he's going to come back with a vengeance and really want to take back his win after the last time. But, yeah, make sure you guys tune in for that. But other than that, guys, that is it for me. Like I say at the end of every video, I am the Nitro General. I really hope you guys do enjoy, and I'll see you in the next one. Nitro General's out. Peace.